September 19th, 1944, 06:15 hours, near Arracourt, eastern France. The morning fog hung thick over the Lorraine countryside as the Panthers of the 113th Panzer Brigade advanced toward their objectives. According to the brigade's after-action report, filed at 5th Panzer Army Headquarters, at approximately 0620 hours, the lead elements encountered enemy tank destroyers of unknown type. The enemy vehicles demonstrated exceptional mobility, engaging our tanks at ranges of 400 to 800 meters before rapidly displacing. The initial contact resulted in the loss of 3 Panthers in 5 minutes. Through the fog, German tank crews heard a sound they had never heard before. A high-pitched engine whine, almost like an aircraft. Low silhouettes emerged from the fog, fired rapid salvos, and vanished before German gunners could traverse their turrets to engage. The entire attack pattern lasted less than 20 seconds per engagement. Across the battlefield that morning, 39 German tanks of the 113th Panzer Brigade, commanded by Colonel Erich Fonsendorf, were about to discover a terrifying truth. The Americans had built a tank destroyer capable of reaching 55 miles per hour, faster than any tracked armored vehicle in existence. While German doctrine assumed all tank destroyers would be slow, heavily armored fortresses like their own Jagdpanthers, the M18 Hellcat, had been designed around a completely different philosophy: speed as armor, mobility as survival, agility as lethality. The mathematics of tank combat were about to be rewritten. A Panther's turret needed 18 to 60 seconds for a full rotation, depending on engine RPM. The Hellcat's hydraulic turret could traverse 300 km in just 24 seconds, independent of engine RPM. At 55 miles per hour, the M18 could cover 400 meters before a Tiger tank's turret could traverse even 90 degrees. The transformation began in December 1941, when Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Davis Bruce appeared for a classified briefing at the War Department. The devastating success of German blitzkrieg tactics had shattered conventional military thinking. Poland had fallen in 35 days. France, with the world's largest army, had collapsed in 6 weeks. The Wehrmacht's panzer divisions had proven that mobility and concentration could defeat any static defense. Bruce, a cavalryman by training who understood the value of speed and maneuver, proposed something radical. Instead of matching German tanks ton for ton, gun for gun, the United States would build a vehicle that would hunt tanks the way cavalry once hunted infantry, through speed, surprise, and superior mobility. The tank destroyer force would operate under a simple motto: seek, strike, destroy. The U.S. Ordnance Department issued requirements for a fast tank destroyer in December 1941. The specifications evolved rapidly through 1942, initially calling for a 37mm gun, then 57mm, then 75mm, and finally the 76mm gun. The Christie suspension was considered but abandoned in favor of torsion bars. In April 1943, Buick's T-70 prototype demonstrated speeds that seemed impossible for a tracked vehicle. German intelligence, when it learned of American tank destroyer development, dismissed it as typical American naivete. Wehrmacht doctrine, proven in 4 years of combat, taught that effective tank destroyers required heavy armor and powerful guns, like their Jagdpanthers armed with 88mm guns and weighing 46 tons. The idea that the Americans would build a 17.7-ton vehicle with armor no thicker than 25 mm, 1,000 seemed militarily absurd. May 23, 1944, the Anzio breakout. The Hermann Göring Panzer Division encountered its first M18s during the fighting in the area. The division's daily combat report to the 14th Panzer Corps noted, "Enemy employs new type of tank destroyer. Vehicle speed estimated at 70 to 80 km per hour." 2 Panzer IVs destroyed before enemy vehicle withdrew. Return fire ineffective due to target's rapid movement. German crews reported vehicles that moved unlike anything in their recognition manuals. Low profiles crossing the battlefield at speeds they associated with wheeled reconnaissance cars, not tracked vehicles carrying 76mm guns. The reports reached Berlin, where they were filed as unconfirmed and likely exaggerated. The German High Command believed experienced crews were overestimating enemy capabilities under combat stress. September 1944 brought the full, devastating revelation. The U.S. Third Army's advance through Lorraine had stretched German defensive lines to the breaking point. Hitler personally ordered a counter-offensive to recapture Nancy and destroy Patton's spearhead. The 5th Panzer Army, under General Hasso-Manteuffel, assembled its best available units, the newly formed 111th and 113th Panzer Brigades, equipped with factory-fresh Panthers. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, attached to Combat Command A of the 4th Armored Division, had positioned its M18s around Arracourt. As dawn broke on September 19th, the German attack developed in heavy fog. Lieutenant Edwin Leiper's M18 platoon struck with devastating precision. According to the 704th's after-action report, Lieutenant Leiper's platoon engaged enemy armor at ranges of 400 to 800 yards, employing shoot-and-scoot tactics, destroyed 15 enemy tanks in approximately 30 minutes of combat. Sergeant Henry R. Hartmann's M18, positioned on the platoon's flank, achieved extraordinary success. His gunner knocked out 6 Panthers in rapid succession, each time displacing to a new firing position before German tanks could return fire. Hartmann would later receive the Distinguished Service Cross for his actions. The 113th Panzer Brigade's losses were catastrophic. From the German divisional records, brigade engaged enemy tank destroyers in the vicinity of Arracourt. Enemy vehicles demonstrated unprecedented mobility, estimated speed in excess of 80 kilometers per hour. Losses: 39 tanks destroyed, 11 damaged. Enemy losses estimated at 3 to 4 vehicles. When German forces finally captured an intact M18 near Metz in November 1944, Wehrmacht weapons testing officers conducted a thorough examination. Their technical report, forwarded to the Inspector General of Panzer Forces, revealed specifications that challenged every assumption about tank destroyer design. Verified specifications: weight, 17.7 metric tons versus Panther, 44.8 tons. Maximum speed, 88.5 km/h, confirmed on test track. Panther, 46 km/h maximum. Engine, Wright R975C4 radial, 400 horsepower. Later production models: power-to-weight ratio, 22.6 HP per ton. Panther, 15.6 HP per ton. Tiger, 12.8 HP per ton. Turret traverse, 360 in 24 seconds. Hydraulically powered. Maximum armor, 25mm turret front, 13mm hull sides. Main armament, 76mm gun, M1A1 or M1A2. Transmission, Torquematic automatic, 3 forward speeds. The German report concluded, the vehicle achieves this performance through an extreme design philosophy. Armor protection sacrificed in favor of mobility. Engine is aircraft. Type, air-cooled radial. Automatic transmission eliminates clutching, permitting the driver to concentrate on maneuvering. Combat effectiveness depends entirely on mobility and crew training. The mathematics of the M18's advantage were irrefutable. German tank turret traverse speeds, dependent on engine RPM, varied significantly. Tiger Y, 6 to 19 drs, 60 to 19 seconds for full rotation. Panther, early models, 6 degrees, 60 seconds for full rotation. Panther, late models, up to 19 degrees at 2000 RPM, minimum 19 seconds. Tiger 2, 15 to 24 degrees, 24 to 15 seconds for full rotation. The M18's hydraulic traverse maintained 15 degrees regardless of engine RPM, critical when engaging multiple targets or tracking fast-moving enemies. At its top speed of 55 miles per hour, an M18 could travel 400 meters in 16 seconds, 800 meters in 33 seconds, and cross a 1,000 diameters killing field in 41 seconds. A Panther needed 30 to 60 seconds just to complete a 180-degree turret traverse when tracking a moving target at varying speeds. The M18's employment revolutionized American anti-tank tactics. The combat manual of the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, updated after Arracourt, specified, M18 employment emphasizes mobility over direct exchange of firepower. Recommended engagement sequence: fire 3 to 5 rounds from a concealed position. Immediately displace a minimum of 200 yards. Re-engage from a new position at a different angle. Never remain stationary longer than 60 seconds under enemy observation. This shoot and scoot doctrine proved devastatingly effective. German tank crews, trained for methodical, deliberate long-range engagements, could not adapt to opponents who refused to fight static, head-on battles. December 19, 1944. The German Ardennes offensive, Hitler's last gamble, was in its third day. The 2nd Panzer Division, spearheading the drive toward Antwerp, approached the crucial crossroads at Nouville, defended by elements of the 101st Airborne Division. 4 M18s from the 609th and 705th Tank Destroyer battalions faced overwhelming odds. The morning fog that had helped conceal German movements now became the Hellcat's ally. According to the 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion's combat report, 4 M18s engaged elements of the 2nd Panzer Division in fog conditions, using high-speed displacement between firing positions, creating the impression of a larger defensive force. Confirmed destroyed 24 enemy tanks. M18 losses: 1 vehicle, 2 artillery. The Hellcat's tactics were simple but effective. They would fire 2 or 3 rounds and then immediately reverse at full speed into the fog. By the time German tanks traversed their turrets toward the muzzle flashes, the M18s had relocated 200 to 300 yards and were engaging from a completely different angle. The 2nd Panzer Division's war diary recorded, encountered strong tank destroyer resistance at Nouville. Enemy vehicles of high mobility operating in fog, unable to effectively engage due to rapid displacement of targets. Attack suspended, pending reinforcement. This 48-hour delay proved critical, allowing the 101st Airborne to strengthen Bastogne's defenses and ultimately hold the vital crossroads. By November 1944, German commanders were desperately trying to develop tactics to counter the M18 threat. General Hasso von Manteuffel issued tactical guidance to the 5th Panzer Army. Enemy M18 tank destroyers confirmed, capable of road speed in excess of 80 kilometers per hour and cross-country speed in excess of 40 kilometers per hour. Standard engagement procedures must be modified. Do not attempt to track moving M18s with turret traverse. Preposition turrets on likely displacement routes. Employ infantry with Panzerfausts on flanks. Use artillery to suppress suspected positions. Avoid pursuit. M18s will always outrun our vehicles. But these adaptations proved largely ineffective. The M18's speed advantage was simply too great, and German crews could not overcome years of training that emphasized deliberate, precise long-range gunnery over rapid response. The Buick Motor Division manufactured 2,757 M18s between July 1943 and October 1944. Production peaked in November 1943 at 267 units. The original contract called for 8,086 vehicles, but this was reduced as the end of the war approached, and the tank destroyer doctrine evolved. Each M18 cost $55,230 in 1943, relatively expensive, due to the specialized engine and transmission, but still mass-producible using American automotive industry techniques. By contrast, a German Panther cost approximately 117,100 Reichsmarks and required significantly more production time due to its complex final drive and transmission systems. The M18 was designed for mass production from the start. The Wright R975 radial engine was already in production for aircraft and other vehicles. The Torque-matic transmission eliminated complex driver training. The open-topped turret simplified manufacturing. Standard automotive components were used wherever possible. The tank. Destroyer Training Center at Camp Hood, Texas, developed specialized programs for M18 crews. Training emphasized skills different from conventional tank operations. Driver training focused on high-speed maneuvering, rapid acceleration and braking, and terrain exploitation. Drivers learned to maintain maximum speed while providing stable gun platforms during brief halts. Gunner training emphasized rapid target acquisition and firing on the move. Unlike German gunners trained for deliberate, precise long-range shots, M18 gunners learned to fire quickly at moderate ranges, accepting lower first-round hit probability in exchange for rapid engagement. Commander training stressed battlefield awareness, rapid decision-making, and coordination with other M18s. Commanders learned to think 3 moves ahead, always planning their next 2 firing positions before engaging. The psychological profile for M18 crews differed from heavy tank crews. Recruiters looked for men comfortable with risk, able to make instant decisions, and who preferred agility over the psychological comfort of heavy armor. The M18's greatest weakness was obvious: its paper-thin armor. With maximum protection of 25 mm on the turret front and just 13 mm on the hull sides, the vehicle was vulnerable to almost every German anti-tank weapon, including 20 mm anti-aircraft guns at close range, 35 mm anti-tank guns at any range, infantry anti-tank weapons, artillery fragments, and even heavy machine gun fire at close range on the side armor. This vulnerability shaped every aspect of M18 employment. Standard operating procedures emphasized never remain stationary under enemy observation. Avoid urban combat where speed is negated. Maintain a minimum 500 meters standoff from enemy infantry. Use terrain masking continuously. Coordinate with infantry to suppress enemy anti-tank weapons. The M18 crews developed an almost supernatural awareness of their surroundings, constantly scanning the terrain for threats and escape routes. By the end of the war, tank destroyer battalions equipped with M18s had recorded the following confirmed results. Tank destruction claims by battalion: 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, 106 enemy tanks. 603rd Tank Destroyer Battalion, 92 enemy tanks. 69th Tank Destroyer Battalion, 67 enemy tanks. 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion, 89 enemy tanks. 85th Tank Destroyer Battalion, 51 enemy tanks. Overall statistics: total M18s in combat, 540. Maximum strength in March 1945. Combat losses: 216 vehicles. Kill-to-loss ratio: 2.3 to 1 in Europe. Average engagement range: 650 mm. Average engagement duration: 2.3 minutes. Although the 2.3 to 1 ratio was respectable, it fell short of pre-war expectations. More importantly, M18 spent approximately 70% of their combat time in infantry support roles rather than hunting tanks. The fundamental assumption of the tank destroyer doctrine, that of massed enemy armored attacks, proved largely incorrect. The Italian campaign presented different challenges. The 85th Tank Destroyer Battalion, operating M18s in mountainous terrain, discovered that even in restrictive terrain, the Hellcat's mobility provided advantages. The vehicles could rapidly reposition between threatened sectors using mountain roads where heavier vehicles struggled. During the battles of the Gothic Line, M18s would race to commanding heights, engage German vehicles in the valleys below, and then displace before counter-battery fire arrived. German forces in Italy, accustomed to the generally ponderous and slow Allied movements in difficult terrain, were repeatedly surprised by the M18's response times. A German corps-level report noted, "Enemy tank destroyers demonstrate the ability to concentrate rapidly at threatened points. The speed of redeployment prevents effective counter-battery fire." The 637th Tank Destroyer Battalion brought the M18 to the Pacific, participating in the Philippines campaign. Against minimal Japanese armor, the vehicles served primarily in bunker-busting and infantry support roles. The open turret proved nearly fatal against Japanese infantry tactics. Crews welded improvised overhead protection and wire mesh screens to defend against grenades and satchel charges. The vehicle's speed allowed rapid response to Japanese infiltration attempts, but jungle terrain often negated mobility advantages. The M18 incorporated several revolutionary features. Torque-o-matic transmission. This automatic transmission, developed by General Motors, eliminated manual clutch operation. 3 forward gears shifted automatically based on speed and load. Drivers could concentrate entirely on maneuvering rather than gear selection, critical at high speeds. Torsion bar suspension. Providing 14 inches of wheel travel, this suspension system allowed sustained high-speed movement over rough terrain. The long suspension travel absorbed impacts that would have damaged leaf spring vehicles. Wright R975 radial engine. This 9-cylinder, air-cooled aircraft engine provided an exceptional power-to-weight ratio. Early C1 models produced 350 horsepower, while later C4 versions generated 400 horsepower. Air cooling eliminated vulnerable radiators and coolant systems. Hydraulic turret traverse. Powered by an electric motor driving a hydraulic pump, this system provided a constant traverse of 15 degrees per second, regardless of engine speed or vehicle movement, a critical advantage over German manual traverse systems. The M18's combat record profoundly influenced post-war armored vehicle development. Although the tank destroyer doctrine itself was abandoned, the tank destroyer force was deactivated in November 1945, the Hellcat's demonstration that mobility could substitute for armor resonated globally. The Soviet Union developed the PT-76 light amphibious tank, and later the BMP infantry fighting vehicle, emphasizing mobility. Britain created the CVRT series, prioritizing speed for reconnaissance. France built the AMX-13 with an E-Taudis automatic loader to reduce weight. Germany, with the Leopard 1, abandoned heavy armor in favor of mobility, a complete reversal of World War II philosophy. Modern wheeled tank destroyers such as the Italian Centauro, the Japanese Type 16, and the American M1128 mobile gun system represent the M18's conceptual descendants, accepting vulnerability in exchange for tactical and strategic mobility. Why were German forces, renowned for tactical innovation, unable to counter the M18 effectively? Several factors contributed. Doctrinal rigidity. German tank training emphasized deliberate long-range gunnery. Crews spent years perfecting precise shooting techniques that were useless against rapidly displacing targets. Technical limitations. German turret traverse systems, dependent on engine RPM, could not match the M18's consistent hydraulic traverse. At idle or low engine speeds, German tanks were virtually helpless against flanking M18s. Psychological shock. German tank crews had operated with impunity against most Allied armor. The psychological impact of suddenly becoming prey rather than predator cannot be underestimated. communications break down. German tactical radios, already stressed by Allied jamming, could not coordinate responses against rapidly moving M18s operating at the platoon level. In post-war interviews conducted by the U.S. Army's Military History Institute, M18 veterans consistently emphasized speed as their primary survival tool. Staff Sergeant Vernon Miller, 85th Tank Destroyer Battalion. We lived by 3 rules: shoot fast, move fast, think fast. If you did all 3, you went home. If you failed at any one, you didn't. Technical Sergeant John Patterson, 6003rd Tank Destroyer Battalion. The Hellcat wasn't about fair fights. It was about unfair fights in our favor. We'd hit them where they didn't expect, when they didn't expect, and be gone before they knew what happened. Private First Class Robert Chen, 7004th Tank Destroyer Battalion. Every time I climbed into our M18, I knew I was sitting in a tin can, but it was a tin can that could run 55 mph. That speed saved my life more times than any armor ever could. The M18's combat statistics tell a complex story. Mobility metrics: top speed, 55 mph, 88.5 km/h on roads. Cross-country speed, 26 mph, 42 km/h. Acceleration from 0 to 30 mph, 11 seconds. Range, 150 miles on 75 gallons of fuel. Ground pressure, 10.5 psi, lighter than many trucks. Combat performance, average kills per vehicle, 2.4. Enemy tanks. Average survival time in combat, 67 days. Mechanical reliability, 200 miles between major maintenance. Crew survival rate when the vehicle was destroyed, 73%. These statistics reveal both strengths and weaknesses. The high crew survival rate reflected the vehicle's speed. Crews could often escape even when their M18 was hit. The relatively short combat survival time confirmed the vulnerability of thin armor. The influence of the M18 Hellcat extends beyond specific vehicles to fundamental concepts in modern warfare. Sensor-to-shooter time. Modern combat emphasizes rapid target engagement, conceptually similar to the M18's shoot-and-scoot tactics. Active protection. Today's active protection systems represent technology attempting to replicate through electronics and interceptors what the M18 achieved through speed, avoiding hits rather than absorbing them. Network-centric warfare. M18 platoons coordinating rapid attacks from multiple directions conceptually. Foreshadowed modern network-centered combat operations. Asymmetric response. The M18 demonstrated that technological superiority does not require matching enemy capabilities, but negating them. The M18 Hellcat remains one of the most innovative combat vehicles of World War II. Born of American industrial capacity and tactical creativity, it challenged fundamental assumptions about armored warfare. German tank crews trained to dominate through superior armor and firepower discovered that American innovation meant changing the rules of engagement entirely. The Hellcat's 55 mph top speed was not just a technical specification. It was a paradigm shift the German tactical doctrine could not accommodate. The M18 proved that in warfare, as in nature, survival does not always favor the strongest or the most heavily armed. Sometimes it favors the fastest, the most agile, the most adaptable. German tank crews, watching their carefully aimed shots miss rapidly disappearing M18s, learned this lesson repeatedly in the killing fields of France, the frozen forests of the Ardennes, and the final battles in Germany itself. Today, when military historians analyze the M18 Hellcat, they see more than just a successful tank destroyer. They see American military innovation at its creative peak, identifying enemy strengths and systematically negating them through unconventional means. German tank crews never knew the American Hellcat could reach 55 miles per hour until they faced it in combat. That technological surprise, combined with tactical innovation and crew training, created a weapon system that transcended its mechanical specifications. In the end, the M18 Hellcat rewrote the mathematics of armored combat. It proved that protection does not necessarily require armor, that lethality does not require the biggest gun, and that battlefield dominance can be achieved through mobility rather than mass. At 55 miles per hour, it outran not only German tanks, but German military doctrine itself. The ghosts of the M18 still haunt modern military thinking. Every time a military planner chooses mobility over protection, every time a commander emphasizes speed of action over deliberate preparation, every time a weapons designer accepts vulnerability to achieve performance, the Hellcat's lesson echoes through the decades. Sometimes the best armor is simply not being where the enemy shoots. The tank crews of the 113th Panzer Brigade, the 2nd Panzer Division, and dozens of other units learned this lesson in blood and fire. They faced an enemy that refused to fight on their terms, that turned their strengths into weaknesses, that struck and vanished like phantoms in the fog. They learned that American innovation did not mean building better tanks, but building something entirely different, something that moved too fast for their tactics, their training, and their turrets to counter. The M18 Hellcat, 55 miles per hour of American audacity, remains proof that in war, speed can be the ultimate weapon.